are live.
Welcome in to the opening line report. Less than a week away from the Super Bowl. We're going to get into, well, all things Super Bowl today. Teddy covers. Joining me, I'm Kelly Stewart, Wagertalk.com. Teddy, we've got lots to talk about, but off the top of the show, we got to walk back a little something from last week.
Sure. I mean, like we do with every show, we want to start with what the opening line is. It's called the opening line report for a reason. And I gave out an emergency betting alert last week on this show. That was as wrong gets. And when that happens, I got to investigate and figure out why. And of course, I got an explanation for exactly why that happened. But let's start with what the markets are doing right now. What have we seen since the opener? From a side standpoint, not much. There was a little bit of Seattle money early. Since that time, there are still a couple of fives out. There's a handful of minus fives out there, mostly 4.5s. Some of the 4.5s are with juice. At this stage, it looks like Seattle's. It's a two-way action game. Seattle's taking a little bit more money than New England, but it's not a game where we expect to see the books get sided. It's very clear, however, and we'll talk about it again when it comes to the emergency betting alert issue from last week. There is significant sharp support for the favorite in this ball game, and that explains at least part of the reason why my EBA was wrong. From a total standpoint, we've seen a little bit of under money come in. So a little bit of Seahawks money at the open, nothing much since, still 4.5, 5, just about everywhere. From a total standpoint, we've seen a little bit of under money. There were some 46s out there. Those aren't there anymore. They're 45.5. The market split between 45 and 45.5 right now. So we've seen a little bit of under money come in. And of course, when you talk about Super Bowl figures, a little bit of under money is actually a lot of under money. But we've seen under money come in, but not anything crazy in that regard where we're seeing the line just dive. So a little bit of Seahawks money, a little bit of under money, and the books are anticipating two-way action side in total as we go into the weekend, as we go into the week, obviously with 90% of the wagers coming the last 48 hours before kickoff.
Teddy, we're going to get into some recent Super Bowl history. We're going to get into the prop sheet, talk about the opening night at the Westgate, and of course, take all of your questions. So if you guys have a question for Teddy, drop it in the chat. But first, I wanted to talk about what you just mentioned in terms of what we're seeing. Now, this is just a one isolated book. I called John Murray this morning because I've got a ton of shows before I leave for San Francisco. And I said, hey, we're not doing a show today. I need to know for all my other shows what's going on. And he said, Crack and I called him last week live on the show and said, hey, would you take $500,000 right now? And he said, no. And I was shocked too. But that's because it depends what you want to bet. It depends what the book's going to need. And at that point in time, they were still almost 2 weeks out. So I said, hey, you guys moved to 5 on the odds logic screen. And he goes, yeah, it was kind of a test. We wanted to see if we could get any support in the marketplace. And I said, and he goes, nada. So you just said that you think it's significant sharp guys coming in on the Seahawks. Nobody's coming back there on the 5, but he did say he does not think this is going to get to 6. He would be very, very surprised if this gets to 6. And you mentioned as far as the total goes, and he said, hey, we're not going to book to need the under. And I said, why not? And he goes, because we've got 60% of our handle on the props. And guess what? 80% of those are all on the over. So he said, it doesn't matter. We're going to be rooting for the under one way or another. We don't necessarily need to book for that side. So just a couple of things worth noting there.
And that's a really interesting point. All right. That is better than, especially for you casual guys out there. This is from the sportsbook director at the Westgate Superbook, talking about how, we already have all of this other action that's pointed over, so we don't need to take a position over here towards the over. And those type of little nuances, they're meaningful, and certainly when it comes to why this book has posted this number at this time, it's very meaningful. And when it comes, of course, but I haven't explained away my my emergency betting alert that was wrong.
Oh,
yeah, which I have to do right off the bat. Because last week I'm like, this is what happens in every Super Bowl. In every Super Bowl, those who are betting the favorite bet the favorite minus the points. Those who are betting the underdog take the underdog on the money line. And it happens year in, year out, year in, year out. So that's why last Monday I'm like, hey, we've seen already some Seattle money. There's plus 190s is the prevailing number right now on the money line for New England. I got to think the money's coming for the Patriots on the money line, not necessarily on the side, from a point spread standpoint, but on the money line, and therefore there's urgency to bet it now. So there have been two key factors that worked that I was wrong about. First is the level of wise guy support for Seattle. It's very clear the wise guys like the favorite in this ballgame. So when you're talking about line moves 2 weeks out and 10 days out and 8 days out, and that's not the recreational bettors. That's the wise guys. And the wise guys are on the Seahawks, laying the points with Seattle. It's pretty clear based on the line moves, pretty clear based on everyone I've talked to. And as you mentioned, Kelly, just a moment ago, John Murray said, hey, let's test, see if we get to 5. Do we get any buyback? They did not get any buyback at 5. So that tells you very clearly that from a sharp square standpoint, the sharps do like the favorite in this one. And when the sharps like the favorite, they're not putting the dog on the money line 10 days out. So that was wrong. But the bigger issue, Kelly, is the exchanges, the Kalshis, the Polymarkets of the world. And those exchanges, when it comes to the, minus 230 plus 190 spread for the money line on the Super Bowl that we were talking about last week, those exchanges are more like minus 205 plus 204, minus 206 plus 204. So the sharp money, the wise guys aren't betting these bets at the sports book anymore. They're betting them in the financial marketplace where you can bet it at reduced juice. Therefore, the plus 190 as an emergency betting alert, that's as bad as I get, guys. Sorry. I do the best I can with these every week, and you don't like to get one like the Super Bowl wrong, but I ain't perfect, and I will get stuff wrong, and I got this one wrong. That being said, you're looking at the money line right. It's not like I buried anyone, that the money's completely gone the other way. You look right now at the books, and you're looking at plus 190, plus 195. So it's not like the information was devastating if you bet it, but there are better numbers out there for these bets than the sports books themselves. And that's an issue sports books are going to have to deal with in the not too distant future, because if the financial exchanges start, sucking out all the profit, sucking out all the volume, that's certainly going to be an issue for books that cater to volume. Most notably those books like DraftKings and FanDuel back east.
Teddy, you and I could do an entire show on the financial market things, the Polymarkets and the Kalshis of the world, but we're going to digress because it is Super Bowl week. But I got lots to say there. I think that's why we're starting to see places maybe like the Westgate Superbook, the legal books doing reduced juice. Right now, they're minus 108. On Friday, they're going to minus 105 for the game. I mean, we're talking 5 cents on every dollar they're willing to give up to say, hey, come on over here and bet this game with us. So I think that is something we're going to start to see maybe from some other books, maybe not the big ones like the DraftKings and FanDuels of the world, but definitely I could see Circa probably jumping on board with that as well.
And as bettors, that's music to our ears. When books are fighting for our money and offering things like reduced juice to get our money, that's a good thing. As a bettor, we want the industry to be healthy. It doesn't help us if books are going out of business and things are going south. But as long as the industry is basically healthy and books are offering, some books, the books that are trying to gain market share are offering reduced juice and the like, that's exactly what we covet. That's why we moved to Las Vegas in the first place.
Absolutely. Being able to shop around, especially at reduced juice prices, will make or break your season. All right, Teddy, we're going to talk about some Super Bowl history. You did a video. Actually, you did a ton of videos. If you guys haven't seen on the Wagertalk Instagram channel, right here on the YouTube channel, on the YouTube Shorts, Teddy put out a ton of awesome content. So make sure you guys go check that out. But one of the things that you did touch on was Super Bowl history. And I feel like every single year, at least since I've been covering the Super Bowl, which I think my first year was really like full on like 2013. So it's been 13 years now. Every single bookmaker wants a boring Super Bowl, right? Like since they started putting out that giant prop packet around town, since everybody's going to walk in the door and want to bet the over, it historically is rooted in please be boring so that we can make money.
Yeah, I think the best Super Bowl for books in the last 10 years was that 13-3 Patriots Rams sleeper.
God, that was boring, though.
That might have been the most boring game I've ever watched, dude. Yeah. And the advantage for the bookmakers in a game like that is, all the props stay under. And again, when you talk about where the volume is for Super Bowl Sunday, yeah, there's side, yeah, there's total, but the props, depending on the book, they're going to range from 50% to 75, 80% of their total action. And when they get to, something like a Super Bowl that's 13-3, and they get the scoop, all the under, all the anyone that bet anything over in that game lost. It's meaningful. That was a Super Bowl Sunday. I remember talking to the bookmakers that night in the morning after. Nothing but big smiles on their faces all around town.
Well, and I think they had big smiles last year until the fourth quarter, right? The Eagles were blowing out Kansas City. There was nothing really crazy going on. Yeah, the game went over the total, but as far as the prop perspective from the Kansas City side of things, and then all hell broke loose in that fourth quarter with Kenny Pickett getting in the game. Then you have more than 2.5 guys throwing passes. Like, then things start to get a little hairy for the bookmakers. Talk to me about some recent Super Bowl history, why we need to look at it before betting this year's Super Bowl.
So we have the basics, and the basics have been very strong to the underdog for the last 25 years. Last 25 Super Bowls, 18 underdogs, 6 favorites, 1 pick'em. Last 18 years, 14 underdogs, 4 favorites. Last 19 years, 14 underdogs, 4 favorites, 1 pick'em. So laying points in general has been problematic. When we start to look at the history, and again, I'm just looking at this century. I don't care what happened in the 20th century. This is all 21st century stuff. But we start to look at the bigger favorites, the favorites of more than a field goal, and boy, it stands out pretty good. Let's just run through them. All right, I got the list right here. Rams -4.5 versus the Bengals. The Rams won that by only 3. Joe Burrow got the money. Patriots -4 versus the Eagles. Patriots lost straight up. Panthers -4.5 versus the Broncos. Panthers lost straight up. 49ers -4.5 versus the Ravens. 49ers lost straight up. Colts -5 versus the Saints. Colts lost straight up. So that's the last 5 times we've seen anyone favored by more than a field goal in a Super Bowl. 4 of those favorites have lost straight up. The 5th one won by a field goal. Pats. Oh, then we have a couple of. We have Steelers -7 versus the Colts. Steelers win that by only 4. Pats -12 versus the Giants. Oh, Pats lost that game outright. Then we had 2 that actually won and covered. The Colts versus the Bears. That was Peyton Manning versus Rex Grossman. All right. If you think this Super Bowl is Peyton Manning versus Rex Grossman, lay the points. Knock yourself out. I don't think it's that. And even that was a sweat. Colts covered there. And the Steelers -4.5 for the Seahawks. They won and covered as well. And people still bitch about that Super Bowl as the single worst officiated Super Bowl they've ever seen. And how Seattle got screwed on every call and Pittsburgh got the money. But that's the 2 favorites. You got Colts and Steelers. And then you had the Pats -7 versus the Eagles. They won by only 3. The Pats -7 versus the Panthers. They won by only 3. The Raiders -4 versus the Bucs. They got blown out in that game. And the Rams -14 versus the Patriots. They lost straight up as well. So, yeah, that's 2 favorites winning and covering. These are -3.5 or higher. 2 favorites winning and covering. 11 favorites failing to cover. 6 of those 11 favorites, I believe, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of those favorites losing outright. It has not been a good track record for the last 25 years, laying more than a field goal in the Super Bowl. And in my opinion, Kelly, that trumps every other consideration. I could think I made a good case for the 49ers against the Ravens. They were so much better than Baltimore that year. Didn't matter. Once you had the 2 weeks of prep and the hype and the brother versus brother and whatever it was. And, obviously the game came down to Colin Kaepernick missing 4 attempts from the 2-yard line, some pretty weird play calling in that span. That being said, there was no difference on the field. Baltimore was every bit as good as San Francisco. I remember making a case, and another favorite, whether it's a Panther. I mean, you can go on and on down the line. Every time you've tried to make a case for these favorites going, yeah, the regular season, they were better. The playoffs, they were better. The situation's better. The matchups are better. It just hasn't panned out that way. So for me, in terms of thinking about this game, yeah, I understand the wise guy support for Seattle. But the track record of this particular game on Super Bowl Sunday, that's meaningful as well. Very meaningful for this bettor.
All right. Our good friend Ralph does a Super Bowl guide that he puts up for free on Wagertalk.com. Teddy, have you read through the whole guide? It's very extensive. I'm hand up. I forwarded to Ariel and I said, send me the cliff notes. Tell me, prop queen, what we're betting in this game. I know. I'm just kind of gotten to the point where the prop market is dominated by people that know so much more than me. So I'd rather take their information than try to decipher things myself. I know that sounds a little lazy, but I'm outsourcing my Super Bowl props.
So, I mean, I am not a guy who bets props every week, every month, all year long. But every year I bet Super Bowl props. Why? Because I got a bunch of friends in town that know what the hell they're doing, and I listen to what they're talking about. Okay, absolutely. And that's why I'm at the Westgate for the opener we talk about things you want to do, and obviously everyone talks about come out to Vegas for March Madness, come out to Vegas for Super Bowl. That prop night at the Westgate, and again, they do it every year. You've never seen more guys dressed worse with more money. You know what I'm talking about? Everybody's wearing a sweatsuit, a raggy old sweatsuit, and everyone's walking around with 50 dimes, with 50 dimes and rubber bands, more. And obviously now people have accounts now. It's not quite as much cash as there used to be, but there's still plenty of cash. There's all kinds of cash at the Westgate. And nobody, there's nobody dressed in a suit. Nobody even has a jacket like this. I mean, it's all just.
I guarantee you and Crack were the two best dressed guys there that night.
Probably. Yeah. But it's a wise guy party. And there's not a lot of wise guy parties, So just to be there, be a fly on the wall, talk to the guys, meet a couple new guys. To me, it's very, I love going down there. I try to make it. I've been a handful of years I've missed, but I've been down there almost every year since I've been in Vegas. And obviously this is my 28th Super Bowl in Las Vegas. So it's something that I like to do. And I find it helpful. I find it informative. And I find it entertaining. And you put all those together, man, that's a good reason to go down there. So I understand it's usually 10 days out before the Super Bowl. So you're not going to come out to, for a prop party and stick around for the game at the hotel. But, and it's not March Madness, but it is kind of cool. If you get a chance, you should go one time.
I highly recommend it as well.
I know you've been there, Kel.
No, it's great. And the reality is you get to kind of see what the openers are too. Remember that packet gets printed one time. They're not updating it. So if it says it's 84.5 receiving yards for wide receiver X, guess what? Yeah, it's staying that way, even though somebody just keeps hammering the over and it's moving up in half-point increments. So remember, the latest ones are going to be updated on the app or in person on the giant board. Teddy, you got that packet almost a week ago now. How many bets did you make that opening night?
So opening night, I didn't make any bets. That's not my MO.
Okay.
That's not how I do it. I want to see where the money's going. I want to track my own stuff. I want to pay attention. And of course, I took a shit ton of notes. Look at this, look at that.
Just like I do every single show that I do. I something's of interest in me, I write it down.
Sure.
I don't go back.
And because also, so some of the guys that I'm hanging with down there, the Frank B's of the world, some of the best bettors in the world. But me, I can't take anyone. I whatever someone gives me, I can't. I'm not blindly betting what other people tell me. That's not how I got this job, and that's not how I'm going to keep this job. I got to do my own work. So when I get info from all these, I go home and I do my work with it. And then what we have is the Teddy covers legendary prop report. I call it the Dirty Dozen this year. It's posted right now. I put it up yesterday on my homepage, w.buzz/TC. So we got the side up. You guys are probably pretty confident.
I was just getting ready to ask that.
I'm not going to tell you what my side bet is, but I think you know.
You did bet the side.
What's that?
You did bet the side then.
Of course.
Okay.
I opened the show talking about recent Super Bowl history and talked about how I thought that probably trumped any matchup advantages. So I'm not going to tell you guys who I bet, but if you're paying attention, you probably know who I like on the side.
You guys can read between the lines from Teddy.
Exactly. So anyhow, that's up on my page right now, Wagertalk.com, and the 12 props. And the key with the props, I'm going to get graded on 12 of them, but with many of the write-ups, I wrote, you can get at this prop this way, you can get at this prop that way. If you can't find this one, look for this number. So it gives you some flexibility to look around. And because some of these props are a pain in the ass to find, and it's a mix between player props and what I'll call general props. The first score of the game will be, first play of the game will be, that type of stuff. And so it's about the split between the two. But 12 props in total, but honestly, if you look at that report, you can probably get 20 bets out of it pretty easily.
So they're not going to be getting the coin toss from you, Teddy.
I did not give a recommendation on the coin toss. If you'd like to bet the coin toss, I do have advice, and it's serious advice. If you want to bet the coin toss,
yes,
for the love of God, bet at reduced juice somewhere.
Bet your friends. There will be somebody at your Super Bowl party. If you want heads, that wants tails. Now, the only thing is they may not take a nickel from you. You may only get $5 from one of your buddies. But I always say that there is always somebody that's like, no, I always want heads, because it's just a stupid bet right out of the gate that is technically a 50-50 proposition, but it no longer becomes a 50-50 proposition if you're laying minus 110 with your local or some.
I saw a book like minus 115 both ways. On the coin
it's
toss.
Awful. It's awful.
On the coin toss. I'm like, that's a little rough. You can lay 101 at the Westgate, isn't it? 101 each way. 101
at the Westgate. And I'm sure plenty of other books probably have very reduced juice as well, if you're looking to get down some crazy exorbitant amount. But I always say,
if you feel the need to have action on the coin toss, make sure you bet at reduced juice. And if you got an edge, let me know. I'm real.
Yeah, I would love to know if anybody has a coin toss edge. Actually, you know what I wish I would have started doing, Teddy? Just writing it down, because I think I lost heads like 6 years in a row. Like, I'm not even.
Well, they're due, Kel. They're due. It's got to be a heads. Yeah. Again, so that's one of the things I guess that I don't. I'm in action every day. You know, I bet just about. I can't say I bet 365 days a year, but I bet 350 days a year. Let's say. You know, I don't need action on the coin toss. It's okay. You know, I don't need action on, we'll be in all kinds of action on Super Bowl Sunday. I don't need that extra oomph on the and especially I don't want to watch the game before kickoff. I don't want to sit there for 20 minutes.
No,
how many,
you don't like
how many hours of commercials do you have between the coin toss and the game actually starting? You know, it feels like that.
It's like an hour. It's like an hour of just talking heads and coin tosses and, of course, the national anthem and all that fun stuff. If you do the coin toss, call the hotline.
There's truth to that, you know. And look, we don't talk about it, and I want to talk about it right now because it's important. All right, if you're having a problem, and Super Bowl brings out problems for problem gamblers. All right, if you're having a problem controlling yourself, if you're having a problem saying I got to bet this coin toss, you're having a problem betting more than you should. This is a big week for Gamblers Anonymous. This is a big week for helplines, and it's okay. We're all human, all right? It's okay to get help if you can't control yourself gambling. You're not doing yourself or anyone you know any favors by going, oh, give me a little more action. Oh, let me bury myself one more time. To be a successful, happy, healthy, functioning gambler, you got to be able to hit the brakes, and stuff like coin toss is kind of a leading indicator for that. If you're struggling to hit the brakes, this is a tough week for people with gambling addiction. Get some help. It's okay. No one's mad at you. Get some help. If you don't, and you can handle yourself, continue watching the show. Thank you.
Teddy, it's crazy. 10 years ago, this exact game, you and I were filming, I cannot remember which documentary. It was not Action, because it was way before Action, a couple of years before. And I was standing in line at the Westgate Superbook, and I had like 3 or 4 dimes on me, right? And the guy was like, how much are you going to bet on Seattle, right? I think Seattle was catching, 1.5?
Was that pick 'em? Wasn't that a pick 'em?
I felt like they bet it off market, though. Whatever the reality was, I ended up betting basically all the money that was in my fanny pack because the cameras were rolling, and I really liked Seattle. But there was that extra pressure, and the way that game ended, obviously it could have went either way. But the reality was, I beat myself up about that for a long time, and I think sometimes gamblers do need that to happen. And to this day, I will not bet more than a certain amount on a game. 1, 2, or 3 units, the end. Because I've seen people bury themselves unnecessarily. I didn't love Seattle in that game. There was no reason for me to have 3 full units when I had full intention of betting 1 unit on the game to have some action. And I really learned a hard lesson there. So I just wanted to kind of piggyback that with, this is not coming from a place of we're looking down on it. This is coming from a place we've all been there.
So this is my 20th Super Bowl in Vegas. And when I talk about it, I'm like, I learned this lesson the hard way. I learned that lesson the hard way. I learned the other lesson the hard way. Let me share some of my experience with you so you don't have to learn these lessons the hard way. It doesn't matter. People want to learn them the hard way.
You have to, Teddy, it's no different with your kid or with my niece or whoever I tell a story to. People have to learn it the hard way. We just hope that you guys do seek help if you do need it, especially when it comes to exorbitant amounts of money that you should not be betting, regardless of win or loss on a game.
Super Bowl is great for action. I put out these props. All right, I put out a dozen. I call it the Dirty Dozen, and they're all a quarter of a unit. All right, little bit of action here, action there, action everywhere. It is a sport. It's the Christmas for sports bettors. It's our holiday. All right, we should enjoy it, but for the love of God, don't be betting money you can't afford to lose, and keep your unit sizes small. And if you keep your unit sizes small, you're fine with any of this stuff. You really are. But like Kelly said, and I remember that and it's weird. I don't remember who we were on air with that day either. But I feel like I know you were there. I was Netta was there.
You were there. I was there. We're all at the Westgate Super Bowl.
Wasn't Crack there?
I think that was just action, because I think that was one of the first times I had met you, because I hadn't started working for Wagertalk yet.
No. I remember with Malinsky meeting you, and we had you do that. What we were trying to, we were pitching Fox to try to do a sport.
Yeah,
we were trying to do Wagertalk Today on Fox in 2014 or something. It was.
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
And I had you down at the doing for the pilot that we shot.
That's right.
But the fact that we were already connected then, that was I think that was 2014. I already knew you then, so I've known you for longer than I think, Kel.
I think so. I think you're right. Wow. Anyway, blast from the past. Thanks for making me feel old, Teddy. Get back into a little bit more of some of the prop stuff that you're going to have, what people can expect from you, and ultimately where they should be looking for value on this giant prop sheet. I mean, you guys all did different videos. Marco said, hey, avoid these bets. You said avoid sucker bets, things like that. Like, when diving into this extensive prop sheet, where should people be looking and where should they be avoiding?
So, yeah, and you talked about the videos that we just shot for Instagram, and I was really excited about what these guys were doing. But of course, when you're doing those type of videos, you got to hype a little bit more. So I came with a bunch of energy and a bunch of this is what we got, and that apparently carries well for these videos, because they've gotten a ton of views already. But certainly, I talked about 3 sucker bets that get made every year in the Super Bowl, and I want to talk about that here. The yes overtime is not priced appropriately. All right, and I know people are always looking to bet a little. In general, the recreational bettors want to bet a little to win a lot. In general, the wise guys are very comfortable betting a lot to win a little. So the big plus prices out there, will there be an octopus? Will both teams get a safety? They're sucker bets. They're bets with they're offering these big payouts that are unlikely to cash. Overtime, 2-point conversion, safety, or the 3 that I mentioned. But certainly series history tells us a lot. Recent history tells us a lot about what we can expect. First play of the game. We've seen a run 4 straight years, 6 of the last 7. We have 2 quarterbacks who've never played in a Super Bowl before. I'm expecting a run first play of the game here. That's one. Team that scores first wins. This one actually is not nearly, you would assume that's a yes. That's not a yes. That's 5-5 last 10 years. Team to score first wins. You get a plus price on the no. That being said, team to score last wins. Last year, that streak finally ended with the team to score last wins, because KC got the money. But prior to that, I think it'd been a dozen straight years where the team to score last had won. Score first 6 minutes of the game, and you can find all kinds of odds on this. You can find Seattle to punt before they score. You can find New England to punt before they score. You can find no score first 3.5, 4.5, 5.5, 6.5, 7.5, 8.5 minutes of the first quarter, and they all have different prices attached to them. That's the type of bet I wouldn't argue with a ladder. So first score last year came with 6:18 left in the first quarter. First score the year before, no scoring in the first quarter at all. You had a quick score, and that 38-35 Chiefs-Eagles Super Bowl, both teams scored touchdowns on their first drive. That's been the exception rather than the rule. Before that, no, and no the previous 6 years. So that's 7 of the last 8. 8 of the last 9. No score first 6 minutes of the game. We've seen relatively low scoring starts. The 3 unanswered scores prop. That's one that I always like to talk about, Kel, because that's one. When I first moved to Vegas, that was like the wise guy prop. Ooh, 3 unanswered scores, lay minus 160, lay minus 180. And I used to lay it every year, and then all of a sudden I started losing with it. And I kept losing with it. And that's another one that's 5-5 over the last 10 meetings. And when you're laying minus 160 on a prop that's 50-50, that's problematic. I no longer bet the wise guy prop of, one team will have 3 unanswered scores. And especially if I like the underdog in a game like this, that's another reason not to make that bet because you think the dog is going to hang. Defensive or special teams touchdowns. Now, this, we talk about defense special teams. That used to be a sucker bet. And in the modern era, I've seen 6 and 6 the last dozen Super Bowls. The modern era, we have seen plenty of defensive and special teams touchdowns. We can go back to, Bears Colts with the special teams TD in that ball game. So it's certainly not an automatic no. And again, you get a plus price on the yes. Most of the sharp guys I know consider this a sucker bet to bet the yes on the defense special team touchdown because the odds aren't right. Maybe, but it's been cashing. Just like the 2-point conversion attempts. The attempt is not what I want. If I'm betting no point 2-point conversion, I want 2-point conversion made because that's one obviously that we've seen attempts on a consistent basis. What have you seen at the 2-point attempts 3 of the last 4 years, 6 of the last 10? But when you look at the made, it's only cashed twice in the last 8 years. So the made much lower than the attempted. The plus prices on missed extra point. No, I don't want. The plus price on overtime. No, I don't want. And we have seen 2 Super Bowls in the 60 go to overtime, but not a whole lot of them. Will a quarter be scoreless? That's always an interesting one. And you get a plus price on the yes, a big plus price. And what do we have? Shoot, we've seen 4 times in the last 8 Super Bowls, at least one quarter go scoreless. You've seen under money coming in this one. So that's one worthy of note. Should I keep going, Kel? I can go on and on here.
We got nothing but time, Teddy. We have 27 minutes until Wager Talk today. We got some questions in the chat I would love to get to as well. So if you've got stuff that you have to share, I'm just over here taking notes because guess who's going to be on Radio Row tomorrow? So I need to make sure that I'm prepared for a lot of the stuff that is in the prop guide. But again, I'm getting the cliff notes here from Teddy.
Sure. You got to, so the game decided by exactly 3 points. 3 of the last 4 years has been decided by exactly 3 points. Longest touchdown, 3 of the last 4 years have been 45 or over. That being said, the 3 years before the last 4 years was all run plays as opposed to pass plays. And that one game, the 13-3 riveting game we were talking about, the longest touchdown of the game was 2 yards. What was the 82-yard interception return touchdown? The longest one of the game for? Oh, that was New England, Atlanta. Yeah, thanks for.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of having a dog in that one, that was there's just certain memories, like you said, like we talked about the Patriots Rams Super Bowl being the worst in terms of like action. That second half, had I been on the Patriots, like everybody in the room I was watching that game with, I had just left Waste Management. I was at my buddy Colt's house in Scottsdale, and everybody had a Patriots ticket. Like, just imagine me sitting there with my Falcons ticket going, I'm in hell. Like, that was a crazy Super Bowl where exactly what happened. I mean, that had to bury the books there late.
Yeah, so that was one. And I remember watching, so I was watching with Kara, my wife. We had a friend's house, and it was a lot of fun. It was like Todd Dewey, you know Todd.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are a bunch of guys there. And it was at this point it was 28-12, and the Patriots fans were starting to get excited. And I'm like, sweetheart, we got plus 3.5. I'm like, Kara, I've watched enough football. I'm like, this game is over. Okay, they need 2 touchdowns and 2 2-point conversions. And look, we're already in field goal range. And, of course, then they weren't in field goal range, and they got 2 touchdowns, 2 2-point conversions, won the toss in overtime, and went to march the game. And that's, that will happen once or twice in a lifetime. But that game was over. You play that game 100 times, and the Patriots will win once or twice. And they won that one. So it sucked. That's one but there's not a Super Bowl I don't remember. Not a Super Bowl I can't tell you who I had, what happened in the game, they stand in your brain in a different way than the regular season games do.
Oh, they absolutely do. For whatever
know.
reason, they are a lot more memorable. You mentioned that you were on the 49ers. I was on the Ravens in that game. We were at the Westgate Superbook. I was with my buddy Jeff, and then like the lights go out.
Yeah.
And we're like, what is happening? Like, how can you not remember that the electricity went out at the Super Bowl? It's like such a weird, like every single year, there's something that's ingrained in your brain that makes you exactly remember that. I'll never forgive the comment section. I'll never forgive Kyle Shanahan for his play calling in the second half. See, that's how you guys remember it. Teddy.
They're already in field goal range. That's what I said. I literally said to John Kerry, I'm like, relax. They're already in field goal range. They need 2 touchdowns and 2 2-point conversions just to get to overtime. And we're already in field goal range.
Yeah. Well, let's hope that the Patriots, for my sake, figure out how to play some really good goal line defense again. Do we want to get to some of these questions here in the chat?
Yes. Now is a great time to do it. I just want to make sure I answered. We went through everything. So we talked about the emergency betting alert and why I was wrong. We talked about the recent history of the Super Bowl. We talked about the prop sheet. We talked about the Westgate on opening night. Absolutely. Let's answer quick.
Okay. All right, we'll go to Sean first. What about fourth down conversions at 2.5? Here's where, Teddy, that I don't understand calculating some of these prop juice points, right? Like how you mentioned 3 unanswered scores is now. I remember when I first came to Las Vegas, I think I laid minus 140 with it when someone told me to bet it way back in the day. Like a poker player was like, Kelly, bet this. And it was that was a lot of juice for me. Like, remember,
but that was the wise guy prop. That was like the secret hidden prop that you're like, oh, it's really cool. It always cashes. These guys bet the minus price, you know.
But
remember that being like when I first moved to town. In 98, 99, people were like, this is the one. That's the prop, you know? And I was like, yeah. And
I get it. So how do we calculate what the appropriate juice on these prop bets should be, right? What about, sorry, go ahead.
Let's talk about fourth downs.
Okay.
All right. In the NFL this season, you know what team converted the fewest fourth downs?
I think it's the Patriots.
Seahawks.
Oh, it's the Seahawks. Okay.
Seven conversions for 12 attempts full season. So when I'm confident, and that's a coach believing in his defense. We can punt. We'll get the ball back. So when I have one of the 2 teams that I don't think is going to attempt a fourth down conversion, I ain't betting over 2.5. It's not going both ways. I can only play under with that prop because I don't think Seattle goes for it.
Okay, if you don't think Seattle goes for it, then we need the Patriots to go for it 3 times, and unless they're down significantly, part of that game script is in your handicap too in this whole thing, right, Teddy? Like how you see the game playing out, then correlating that with your prop bets and things like fourth down conversions. All right, Mad Max. Sorry, Teddy.
No, but it's important to note, all right, because you can really fall into disaster scenarios. If every prop bet you make falls into your exact game script and then the game doesn't come out the way you think, you're just going to get buried.
Yeah.
So that's why when I'm doing my prop report, I'm making sure that it's not just player props overs, or if I like the over for the game, or player props under if I like the under for the game. There's a variety in there. So even if a piece of your game script is wrong, you don't lose every bet that you make. That's the goal.
All right. One of our Wagertalk insiders, Mad Max, is questioning Drake Maye's arm health. Have you heard anything in regards to, is he healthy? I mean, I feel like we get to the point midway of the season, right? All season long, or all summer long, Matthew Stafford's hurt. We get to the midway point of the season, we're like, Matthew Stafford's not that hurt. We've been hearing Drake Maye's arm has been hurt all playoffs. We've been hearing that Sam Darnold, I think it's his side or his groin or somewhere oblique is hurt, right? I haven't heard that all week long, but I have heard an awful lot about Drake Maye's arm.
Yeah, and Drake Maye also had the flu, which is not necessarily the best scenario. Or he missed a day of practice for sickness as well, which could obviously maybe help the other injury. But when you hear rumblings and bumblings, it could mean something. All right, this time of the year. That being said, don't forget, there is no bigger hype event in American sports than the Super Bowl. You have 500 reporters from 500 different papers that all get paid to go out there and write stories. A lot of stories. New story every day. Multiple stories every day. What does that mean? That means little things get blown up into big things this type of week. When it comes to Drake Maye's injury, I'm of the impression as of now that it's not that big a deal. If it turns out that we hear more about it in the next day or two, if Drake Maye's limited in practice this week, that's going to change things dramatically. But as of now, we haven't heard any indications that that's going to be the case, even with the Seattle money. You talked about you don't think this line's getting a 6. If Drake Maye's hurt, this line could get to 7. But I don't think Drake Maye is going to be so hurt that the line will get to 7. I would expect him to be full participant in practice this week. And if he's not, the markets will adjust pretty darn quickly.
Yes, then we might actually see a 6 pop up. But as far as, let's talk about the weather, Teddy. Fantone24 says rain and drizzle, at least here on Monday morning on the East Coast, is correct there for Santa Clara. Remember, guys, it's at Levi's Stadium. Even though I'm going to be in San Francisco, where the convention center is, we're not going to be in Santa Clara. It's so strange. I don't get it. Like, at least with Vegas, we were at the Mandalay Bay Convention Center, and then Allegiant Stadium was across the street. But
sure, it's pretty easy. Here you'll be in traffic for an hour.
They're throwing us in downtown San Francisco to go, 90 minutes in traffic to Santa Clara. That's why I'm getting the hell out of town on Friday. I want to watch the game with my family and friends.
Well, being on radio, being on Radio Row and the like is, Media Row is pretty cool.
Oh, absolutely. And there's going to be great restaurants in San Francisco. I'm going to be there with one of my best friends. So it's going to be a really great week. But the zoo that is the Super Bowl on Sunday, I just assume I know
no part of it.
Crazy. Yeah. Well, and someone's like, well, if the Broncos made it, would you have gone? And I said, yeah, if somebody gave me a free ticket. I'm not paying an exorbitant amount of money to go watch the Broncos, who have won 3 Super Bowls in my lifetime, go win another Super Bowl.
Yeah, so I had dinner last night with some old friends, and one of them was telling me a story about how he went to Super Bowl 3 by mailing in an envelope with a $6 check. $6.
Wow. Gosh, that's just it's
and he sent the envelope into whatever NFL office there was, and he's like, yeah, back in the early 70s, I went to 4 Super Bowls in an 8-year span, and I got all the tickets ahead of time and never paid more than $20.
That's just outrageous. That's outrageous. And we all know I'm a seat snob. So that $5,000 seat, which is probably going to be $10,000 on the aftermarket, sites. And I'm not paying $10,000 to sit in the nosebleeds. All right. Any other questions you guys have for Teddy? Please drop it in the chat. Teddy, anything you want to leave our audience?
Yeah, well, I want to. Matt Murray just put a question on the over 6.5 kickoffs returned. So I'm anticipating a relatively low possession game. These are not teams that play with a lot of tempo. These are teams that are both reliant on their defense. So when you're talking about kickoffs returned, that has a lot to do with A, the total. That's kind of a bet. And B, are the kickoffs actually going to get returned, or are we going to see touchbacks and the like? But more than any other factor, it has to do with how many possessions are we going to get in the game, or how many scoring possessions. And at 6.5 returned, it's not a bet that I made one way or the other. Slightest of leans to the under, but it's not a bet that I got involved with. Another question: Seattle not to convert a 4th down at plus 130. Last in the league in 4th down attempts. I agree that wholeheartedly. I'm not convinced that plus 130 is still out there anymore. Richard Lockhart's asking about both teams punt on the first drive. No argument with that. No argument at all. If I don't like any score in the first 6 minutes, I like both teams to punt before their first score. At plus 330, looks like a good look. Where can I find that? So one of the issues with finding props, and Richard, thank you. I really appreciate the questions, guys. Thank you, Richard. One of the issues with props is where to find them, how to scroll down, where are they listed in the props. What I did on my prop report was I put the number from the Westgate. I don't know if that's helpful in any way to anyone, but it might be. But you got to dig around for them and stuff. And that's why also I made sure that in the prop report, I'm like, you can get it this way, you can get it that way, you can get it the other way. If you can't find one prop, you can find another prop that's comparable, and still get the essence of the wager that we were trying to make.
Awesome stuff. I hope you guys have a very profitable Super Bowl. Teddy, anything you'd like to leave our audience with before we get out of here for Wager Talk today?
Yeah, so come back next Monday. Next Monday's show, it's as fun a show as we get. We'll get Kelly all pissed off about whatever happens on Sunday, and we'll go through what happened in terms of props. We'll grade a bunch of props on air, and we'll go through the futures, the early futures for next year, which is then I'll give some of my thoughts on which teams I think are on the way up and which teams are on the way down. It's a lot of fun. It's a great show. Next Monday, as for this week's show, boy, I want to thank you guys again. You're a terrific audience. You're beautiful. Don't ever change. But really, the comments and the feedback I get from you guys every week is overwhelming sometimes. I appreciate your support. Thank you. And good luck with the game. And again, I don't want to overemphasize this. Bet with your head, not over it. This is a week bettors get in trouble. If you're struggling, get some help. It's okay. Thank you. Cheers.
All right. Up next is Wagertalk today. Andy Lang, Dan Alexander. Thank you to Teddy Covers. Thank you to everybody watching us live as well as on the replay. If you have a question regarding the Super Bowl, maybe, just maybe, Teddy will jump into the comments section today and get you guys some questions answered. I will try to do the same on my flight tomorrow. Good luck this week, and we'll see you next Monday.